We have received 4 new scenes from season 3 of The Chosen. This means that we're getting more and more of an idea of what the season is going to look like and what the storylines are. All of these scenes that we've gotten so far are from the first 2 episodes of the season, and that gives us a lot of explanation as to what we're going to see. Now, we know a lot from our behind the scenes deep dives that we've been doing every single Sunday, so if you want to join us on Open Sunday when we go through The Chosen and dive through season 3 and what it's going to look like, make sure you join us for those. But for today, we're going to be diving deep into a scene that was shown to us by Dallas in a live stream a little while ago. And by the way, if you're watching this on Tuesday, you're going to get a new scene tonight, so make sure you join us for the live stream after that. Here on The Snipe Life, we talk about The Chosen, other Christian media, and we dive deep into biblical topics. So if this interests you, it would be amazing if you subscribe to our channel. We'd love to see you on the next video. But for today, let's talk about this new scene that we got from The Chosen a little while ago. So let's give some background before we jump into this scene specifically. Remember, in season 3, there is going to be a moment of rest for all of the disciples, and that includes Jesus, as he's going to go back to Nazareth. And the rest of the disciples are going back home as well. But some of the disciples don't have homes to go back to, like Simon the Zealot, or Thomas and Rama, whose home is pretty far away. So they're going to have to figure out different places to live, and that's going to play into this scene here. The scene begins with John and Big James as they're walking back in Capernaum. They're almost home, and they're so ready to get there. They've been traveling since after the Sermon on the Mount and the events that happen right after that. But now they're finally almost home, walking back to their front door, and they're excited to get there. They talk about some different things, and while John is more excited about the ministry of Jesus and everything that's happening there, Big James seems to be even more excited about his mother's cinnamon cakes and how excited he is to eat those when he gets home. As they're having this conversation, Thomas walks up behind John. He surprises him, and immediately John goes in for a secret handshake that they've made. This is interesting because it shows that Thomas and John are becoming closer. And after season 2, they've had even a little bit of tension there. Remember in episode 3, as Big James and John kind of snap at Thomas for being the new guy?
I was a successful businessman, and yet I was always behind.
He wasn't your tax collector.
Quit defending him. I want an answer.
Hey, you're new.
Also, we see a new relationship kind of forming here, and Big James seems surprised, if not jealous, of this situation, which is really interesting to me to see his reaction. I think a huge theme of this season is going to be John and Big James as they become more of individuals. Remember, as they go out 2 by 2, they're not placed with each other, they're placed with different people. So they get to build on their characters a little bit more individually rather than being a brothered pair. We see that Big James didn't even know that Thomas was going to come and stay with them. This is a pretty big deal because Big James feels on the outside of things now. He's seeing as Thomas and his brother are getting closer, he's not in the know of what's going on. And so that kind of bothers him, and you can see that. But they continue to walk down the road, and they're welcomed by Zebedee as he sees the 3 disciples of Jesus of Nazareth coming into his home. And he is so excited. He welcomes them in, gives them each a hug, and kind of celebrates the fact that they're back in Capernaum. As Zebedee welcomes them, Big James is kind of confused again because he didn't know that Zebedee knew that Thomas was coming either. And so again, he feels even more on the outside. Then Big James says, Abba knew? As if to say, who doesn't know that Thomas is staying with us? Does everybody know? Am I the only one that's been left out of this? And John kind of dismisses it and he says, yeah, me and Thomas talked to him earlier. So this points to me that we're going to see a scene with Thomas and Zebedee and John at the very least. And I think it's going to have something to do with Rama as well, and we'll talk about that in a second. Zebedee embraces John and he says, of all the fathers in Capernaum, I must be the most envied. He's excited to have these followers in his house, and his son's back, of course. He's very proud of them. James gives his father a hug and says, I'd introduce you to Thomas, but it seems you already know him. And Zebedee then welcomes Thomas with a big hug. The conversation then quickly turns to the Sermon on the Mount. Remember, they were all there for this, including Zebedee and Salome. But we don't exactly know what happens in between then and now. All that we can deduce is that definitely there was a scene with Zebedee, Thomas, and John, and possibly Rama here. But it seems like Zebedee and Thomas specifically had some talking points about the sermon, and Thomas has some questions because he overthinks everything, he says. John then asks where his Ima is, and Zebedee informs them that she had to go to the market because she realized they were out of cinnamon. No cinnamon cakes for James. He's pretty upset about that. And then nearing the end of this conversation, Thomas breaks in and says that he has something very important to talk about with all of them. This is interesting. Could he be asking for Rama's hand in marriage? Could he just be looking for advice for that relationship overall? It seems like it's definitely about Rama because there's this kind of schoolboyish charm in which Thomas is talking about. And Zebedee responds in a way that only an elderly father can. It's almost like this nudging wink wink sort of moment with Zebedee and John. They both understand that something is happening here with Rama and that Thomas needs some advice as he's navigating through it. Zebedee even continues, leans over to John and says, "I think I know what it is." And John responds, "I definitely know what it is." And then the scene ends with Big James saying, "I don't know what you're talking about." And again, he feels even more left out here. One massive thing that I think is going to be extremely important for Thomas is that Zebedee is almost becoming like a father figure to him. Remember in season 2, episode 3, when Thomas said this,
I didn't know he lost his father. I lost mine several years ago. I'll have to ask him about that.
Now, I grew up without a father as well, and I remember anybody that would become like a father figure to me was extremely important. So I wonder if Zebedee is going to become that for Thomas, if that's going to be someone that he can lean on and really learn from in terms of women, in terms of everything that he's doing with Jesus and the mission that they're on. And I wonder what the consequences are going to be for Big James after this scene as well, or throughout this season. Like, is this foreshadowing for the future? Because we know that John and Thomas are going to be sent out 2 by 2 together. So they're going to grow even closer during that time, while Big James is with Little James, and obviously on his own mission, but I wonder if he protests against that to begin with as he's separated from John.
No! No!
It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So story-wise, there's not a ton to this scene, but there is a lot of setting up that seems to be happening here. Setting up the brothers' relationship, setting up John and Thomas's relationship, and setting up Thomas and Zebedee's relationship in terms of getting advice for Rama and all of that. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into this, just like all of the writing of The Chosen. It seems to be really, really solid, and I cannot wait to see the context that is formed around this moment. Either way, we're only a few months away from The Chosen Season 3 airing, and I am extremely excited for that. If you didn't know, this is my full-time job now, so this is what I focus on 24/7. If you want to help us to keep on making these videos and do even better videos, bigger videos, we'd love for you to sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/thesnipelife. There's a link in the description below. Anyway, hope you like this video. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.